You're listening to Pointing Pointers, the Point to Point podcast.
Hello, good evening. I'm Ben Atkins, and as you can see, I'm not only joined by Sam Davies-Thomas for episode 11 of Pointing Pointers. We have the heroes of the moment, Fiona Needham and John Dawson. How you doing, guys?
Hi, good, thank you.
Good, all good.
Good. Well,
thanks.
Yeah, no one cares, Sam, really. I'm joking. Come back. So we actually had a podcast last week, as you well know, in which we said that the very likely outcome would be that these two would engineer a lovely feat for British pointing, and we were very much hoping that Fiona Needham would get the job done at Cheltenham, which of course she did. Now, unless you've been on holiday or had your head in the sand, you'll be very familiar with what happened on the day. But let's start with the celebrations at Hutton Rugby. Let's go in reverse order. Me and Sam were there last weekend. Fiona, sorry we didn't get to catch up with you, but it was fantastic to. We were just setting things up in the morning and just heard this huge roar go up, and we knew exactly what had happened. That one of you had walked into the sponsors tent and. With a bit of scurrying across and having a look. Obviously, you were being interviewed by Tom John, and it must have been really nice. Brilliant timing to have kind of a homecoming meeting the weekend after Cheltenham, and to be there with the buzz of the place must have been great at the weekend.
John,
Either of you.
It was a great. It was a real feel-good factor. John was there obviously a lot earlier than me because he's a lot more organised. So I just arrived when the first race was there. We took the trophy and sort of brought that out. Obviously he had a big cheer. I went into the sponsors tent when they're all a bit the worse for wear and was interviewed by Tomo, but no, it was great. Everybody. It was a wonderful win, but it was like everybody. It was for everyone.
And it very much felt like that. We spoke to lots of people from the team that were involved, and obviously the local hunt and other people that were there on the day, and everyone was coming over and talking to the very helpful ladies that were helping me and Sam on the day set our PPORA stand up, and everyone was coming over. Oh, wasn't it fantastic? And it was all this huge buzz about it. So, firstly, obviously, massive congratulations. But secondly, we just wanted to hear about the emotions of the day. Really, John. We'll perhaps get into the tactics slightly later. I know Sam's dying to ask you about that. But as you were going round and you were kind of going out on that final circuit, what was going through your mind? Where's Derek O'Connor?
No, I never even thought of Derek O'Connor, to be honest. No. I was happy enough. She was probably just a bit long at 1 or 2 down the back. And I just was conscious that I wanted just to get her in deep at 1, just to halt her doing that, just getting long and longer. She has been known a little bit to do that before, so it wasn't a surprise for me, but she was just getting a little bit carried away, and I think it was the ditch going around the corner. I think she was quite long at, and I just hadn't quite got her back. But that's really what I was thinking going down the back anyway.
And this is when it pays to know the mare so well. And you've ridden her since the very early days, in her maidens right the way through. And presumably that's a great position to be in.
Yeah, she was always quite slow away to warm up to a jump in the early days. Fiona will remember a couple of times, particularly at Tabley, I think it was, where the first 2, I think, she literally just clambered over, and we were maybe 15, 20 lengths off the back of them. And that was the first day, actually, that she really, to me, stood out. Like she did something special, even in a maiden race, to become detached like she was. And then I crept away, and I was in front after the second last, I was in front too soon, really, and she half got a bit lonely in front, pricked her ears, and I got collared by one. But the fact I was sort of almost tailed off straight away, and then she sort of warmed into it, and I think that's what she was like to start with. obviously now we're a bit further on. She can sort of hold her own a lot more earlier on now in a race. So, but yeah, it's just been nice to sort of work her out as we go, and she's just progressed all the time.
Yeah, fantastic. And Fiona, you said on Nicola on Sunday that she's always shown you a fair bit. After those first few maidens, were you beginning to doubt your own judgment? Were you starting to think, is she any good, or was the belief always there?
Well, no, the first run was very sketchy. I was, oh my God, this looks awful. So I was quite relieved when John came back with a smile on his face and said, no, it'll be fine. I was like, good. And then she kept progressing. Like you said, she kept warming into her races, but she's always shown quite a lot on the gallops at home. And then we went to Alnwick, so you think, well, that's all right. And actually, the horse that beat her at Tabley is a horse called YOOOOORKSHIRE, which has actually come out and done well.
Yeah, so good horse.
You're like, fine, And then we went up to Alnwick, and I really thought she would win. And she got beaten by one of Ellis's, which turned out to be Deafening Silence. But I was like, oh. And then it all went
fine. The form was there in retrospect.
Yes, exactly. But at the time, I was a little bit disappointed. So yeah, but no, it's so you do begin to doubt yourself a wee bit. But anyway, it's all come good.
Brilliant. And yeah, it was a strange sort of Cheltenham week, and I think a lot of people who are fans of racing in general, not just point-to-pointing, but just racing fans, we're probably going into the Friday thinking, oh, this has been a bit of a damp squib in lots of ways. And I think you did a lot to lift people's souls on that second to last race on the Friday. I know for me it was a big punch the air moment. And I think it's not only that we were talking about it before, but I think what this whole story's done is given lots of people hope that they don't have to go buy a really expensive store horse to have this sort of dream come alive. And I think it's a boost for the whole industry, but particularly for people in point-to-pointing who are doing things, playing at the lower end of budget, maybe train one or two or just a small string, and it gives all those people hope, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that I think that's so. It's lovely. It was certainly lovely for us, but if you have a horse that you think's good enough, well, just go and have a go. Really, if you're not in it, you can't win it, can you? So just have a go.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks a lot for gracing us with your presence. The question on everyone's lips will be, where next?
Yeah, don't know. Don't know. We've got several options in the fire. Like I said originally, she's not entered for Aintree, so was possibly the Cheltenham evening meeting and then Horse and Hound Cup, but we'll see how she comes out of it. There is also, as I have said, that she could go in a staying handicap of some sort. I don't know, but John will certainly be on board, whatever.
Would you think about Aintree or not? Not definitely not Aintree.
No, Entry's closed today, and she's not. No, yeah. I think, as John said, she can be a bit bold, and I think at the moment I'm a bit nervous about Aintree at the moment. I think the track would suit her, but she could just be a bit too bold. Didn't discuss that with the jockey.
Well, whatever happens,
he wouldn't mind.
So James Gray, who did the first 3 seasons of this podcast with us, who you know well, John, he claims at least to own the mare. Whether that's true or not, we yet to find out. But whatever the future holds for Fiona nominate, it's so exciting as well that that she is a mare, and you've kind of got whatever you decide and whenever that time comes. She's a really young mare and she's got plenty of racing ahead. It's just so exciting. You've got a decade plus of enjoyment to come from her yet.
I have to say, of all the lovely emails and contacts we've had, I got an email from the stud and the girls who looked after her when she was a foal.
Oh, that's so nice.
And it was just lovely. And actually, what they say of her character, she hasn't really altered. They said she was very cheeky, very bold. So she's exactly the same.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, we saw as she was trying to barge out her stable on Sunday when you were live on TV. That was quite interesting. Well, princess. Exactly. Well, we won't keep you any longer, but thanks so much for coming on tonight, and really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So that was great to hear from John and Fiona. Charlie, welcome along to the podcast. Great to have you back after all this time. We missed you.
I miss you boys too. Well, I mean, I say I missed you. I've probably seen and heard plenty of you in recent times, but yeah, I've been an avid listener to the podcast, and it's been really, really good. I mean, I think you guys are doing an outstanding job, all jokes aside. And I can see you looking at me like I'm saying it with.
I'm waiting for the punchline. I'm waiting for the punchline.
But I'm being very, very serious. I think it's really good. It's a great listen.
Oh, thanks, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Because he always says that Charlie, he never gives us any credit for anything. He was just and there he is.
So there you go, and it's on record as well, so it can never be taken away.
Yeah, it's like oh no, we're going off topic already. We can't do it. We've got to focus. The boss is listening somewhere in Devon. We're going to get told off. So what we're going to do today is a bit of a bonus edition. We wanted to do something after the Red Mills and Hunter Chase episode last week. There isn't one due technically for another couple of weeks. We just thought we'd do a little bonus episode, talk to John and Fiona, and then get Charlie on to talk through some talking points from the last little bit of time. So yeah, let's get straight into it, chaps. Firstly, Charlie, congratulations are in order, because since the last time you were on here, you've got a new role. How are you enjoying it?
Yeah, my new role, it's interesting. It's good to give something back, and so we're trying to get some new things done, trying to create some deals and discounts for being PPORA members, and trying to reach out to the members and find out what it is that they actually want us to do, representing them as the Point-to-Point Owners and Riders Association then.
Let's get into a few topics. Firstly, just a statement rather than anything else. John Barlow is king. Sam, he, as I said before, he doesn't miss. Takes one dart to Hutton Rugby, bullseye.
You won't forget it either, will you? Either.
It's not a discussion point. It's not even something I want to talk about.
That was good though, because Paddy Barlow obviously took a crash and fall off that horse, didn't he? The last a few weeks back, and yeah, he executed it really well the other day, and yeah, won nicely. I'd say it's probably quite a nice horse when all things come together going forward. That was good. But yeah, you wouldn't let John Barlow go at Herworth, would you?
No. Quickly on that, I mean, Paddy Barlow, bless him. I was at Charm Park when he had that crash and fall, or I was on the way home, and so I was in the lorry with Fran, and she said, "Oh, you better message him, check he's okay." So I messaged him, and then I was like, "Do you know what I'll do? Actually, I know he's got his phone because he's messaged Gina, I think, and I'll just call him." So I called him and checked in, and he was like, "Yeah. No, it's I'm okay. I'm just waiting to get a scan on my head, and then I just got hopefully I'll be back for next weekend or something." And so I put the phone. I said, "You know what? He sounds pretty good, to be honest. I'm quite surprised considering that he was knocked out for as long as he was." And then half an hour later, he obviously read my message, hadn't realised he'd spoke to me. So then messaged me back saying, "All okay, mate. Just waiting for a scan. Hoping that I'll be able to get back as soon as possible."
Memory seems great. Oh, bless him. Well, it's not a laughing matter, is it, frankly? But it is pretty funny in the circumstances. Yeah, bless him. Well, yeah. And I was a bit concerned going into that run that him and the horse would be feeling a little bit, lacking in confidence, but not a bit of it. They absolutely bolted up, Sam.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and it's a tricky old course, to be honest. As Fiona was saying off air, I think it was, that it's a good course for thinkers and stuff like that, because they don't really know which way they're going, and it's probably quite a trappy track to get a horse into a rhythm, I'd say. But no, he did a good job, led from the front, and yeah, he won it well. John Barlow,
he shoots, he scores. And so, Charlie, in case you haven't gathered by now, me and Sam went up for the PPORA owners competition thing, which we'll explain it slightly better in a moment, to Hudson Rugby. Let's just clarify that, otherwise Jake Exelby will be straight on the blower. So me and Sam are basically helping the PPORA, Go Pointing, etc., launch a competition to win shares in 6 horses with 6 different trainers. Charlie, you and Fran have very kindly put a sharing horse up. Alan King, Kelly Morgan, etc., etc. And basically, people come along to the course, sign up either on paper, on course, or can do so online. And if you're listening now, why not do it? Go to gopointing.com and you basically fill in your details. It tells you which trainers are closest to you, but you don't have to necessarily commit to a trainer at this point. And you get entered into a completely free prize draw to have a share in a horse for the 24-25 season, which is great fun, really.
I'm not going to lie, you didn't get many boxes ticked up in North Yorkshire last weekend. It was all Sam Coward, to be honest.
Oh,
yeah.
Charlie who?
Years of my life living in Malta.
That was it. Yeah. You what?
I thought I was an honorary Yorkshireman. I spent a couple of years of my working life living in Malton. So.
No, they didn't know who you were at the minute.
No.
More.
And I feel sorry for the people that ticked Tom Ellis. So maybe that's the next talking point, because clearly he won't be training next season. I'm sure that the yard will still be operating as a point-to-point outfit, and the details of that will remain to be seen. But we can't let this episode pass, chaps, with you two know him far better than I do, but a giant of the game, really, leaving our ranks. What do you think of it all, Charlie?
Look, as in, initially when it was muted, I was a little bit surprised, but I think more importantly, they're looking at it from I think it came about because of Late Night Pass. And, when he talked to me about it, I must admit, I was a bit like, well, I don't know how many chances in life you're going to get to have a runner in the National owned by your mum and dad, bred by your mum and ridden by your wife. So I think it made a lot of sense from that point of view. It's obviously something that Tom, Gina and Jack have thought about, and they're looking to diversify, do something different. I think reading between the lines, I don't think it's like an exit completely from point to pointing, as we've actually seen as we move into the weekend. The name Georgina Ellis joins the keepers ranks. And so I think it's just them looking at doing something different. They're going to obviously have some runners under rules and see how it goes. But I think more importantly, they wanted the opportunity to run Late Night Pass with Tom as the trainer. And I think it would be really difficult for anyone to have too many reasons to see that as being the wrong decision, if that makes sense. And look, fingers crossed that they are going to have a dual operation with some of the runners under rules and still keeping a decent string of point-to-pointers and being involved in the sport with Jack still as an amateur and Gina for as long as she continues to ride, and also just training them. So I think it's going to be business as usual with a few dipping their toe in under rules.
Yeah, it's going to follow down the same lines as really Caroline and Gerald did to begin with, wasn't it? And then, Alan and Lorne obviously do so successfully now. And as you said, Charlie, I think it's, you only get one chance to train a horse that's bred by your mother and ridden by your wife in the Grand National, biggest race in the world. So, I think that's said, it's a deciding factor, isn't it, of it all?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, let's move on from that. And just to say, obviously, Tom, we wish you all the best with that endeavour. Exciting times ahead.
And his final run at Brayfield the other day went on and won well. So that was owned by Sarah Folks. So that was just quite fitting, really, to have his last point-to-point runner be a winner. He was quite emotional. I was there actually, and he was quite emotional afterwards. And he's not a chap that gets too emotional, only about Gina. So that was good.
Fantastic. Sam, can you tell Charlie, and in doing so, our listeners, what happened with the Jack Teal horse that me and you backed heavily at the weekend?
I'd say heavily, 20 quid. I suppose 20 quid's quite heavily, I suppose, yeah, for a point-to-point, especially at them sort of prices. But, so we were looking at the first race, and in the race card, the horse was getting £1.03 off the John Dawson horse. The bookies' prices came out, and then eventually after that, there was a announcement of the tannoy to say that the horse was actually going to carry a £10 penalty. So in fact, was only be getting half a stone off this horse, which in my eyes meant that the horse probably couldn't win, and it didn't win. It got beat, but only got beat by 3 lengths. So this was probably this is obviously a misprint in the race card, and it's probably something that should be done slightly better. I know that Jack Till did turn up late to the point to point, and he did get fined for that. So that's what happened.
Yeah,
and we lost our money.
Yeah, we did, and there was no big giant floating cash out button in the sky. Otherwise, we might have done it. If we'd been a bit more on our toes and actually, not doing our jobs as we were supposed to be, Sam, we probably would have gone and had a word. Say again.
Too busy we were, and
we were exactly, mate. We were doing what we were there to do. So I did actually go speak to the bookie afterwards. Sam. Yeah. Do you know what he said to me? I went and said, look, I said, a bit of a nightmare that, wasn't it, really? I said, obviously, you had to know, it's not your fault, but I wouldn't have placed that bet. And he said, to be honest, mate, I wouldn't either. Definitely would have wanted if she wasn't given all that weight. And I was like, yeah, thanks for that. Anyway, so yeah, look, I think it's probably something that's happened to us and hasn't happened to a lot of other people. We're just pocket talking, really. But it was frustrating, and I don't think it's the only thing that Weatherby's can be accused of.
And it was Jack that approached the clerk of the scales and said that he should be carrying more weight. So, Charlie, if he hadn't have done that, you'd probably know better than I would. If he hadn't have done that, would he then got fined later on and lost the race if he'd then won?
Yeah, I would imagine if he carried the incorrect weight, he'd have been disqualified, wouldn't he? So, but I mean, I suppose playing devil's advocate with that, I think it is your responsibility as the keeper when you do your declarations form to make sure your horse is carrying the correct weight. So whether it all got lost in translation a bit because he was running late, according to you guys, he didn't do it at the time, and then realised before the horse was due to run and rectified his mistake. It's frustrating. Look, I'm sure, as you say, it's obviously a glitch from Weatherby's point of view when they're printing out the race cards and all of that. I'd hope it's a thing that doesn't happen too often, and I suppose we just have to accept it for what it is, that it's a bit of an unfortunate mistake, and hopefully one that isn't repeated too often.
And reimburse my £20.
And yeah, I'm sure the bookmaker did that.
Yeah. What Sam doesn't know is that I went back in for more when he wasn't watching. Fine. So speaking of the bookies, while we're still there, something we've talked about a lot. It's polarizing, this, Charlie, and you're a good person to talk to about it, because there's a good chunk of people listening that don't care, don't have a bet, aren't interested in that side of the sport, and there's other people that basically are drawn to racing and enjoy it because they have a betting opinion and they like to solve that puzzle that we're talking about, at the moment, in terms of racing not just being a casino game. It's a proper puzzle for thinking people, and so we've probably got 50-50 split, let's say, who listen to the podcast. But me and Sam were talking about it when we were there at Hudson Rugby. It's, if you are actually a betting person, to go to the races and to get a decent price on any horse that you fancy, even in a 4 or 5 runner race, is an absolute mission. There was races where there's 4 runners and you had 7-4 on shot against a 6-4 on shot versus a 2-1 shot versus a 5-1 no hoper. And you're thinking, well, one of my sort of betting rules, if you like, is I never back odds on. And I just, you're looking at that thinking, well, it's a tricky one. I don't know how it can be solved. And knowing that we can't really solve that one particularly between these 3 great minds, I've thought I'd ask a slightly different question of you, Charlie, which is, if we could get round the hurdles, the regulatory hurdles, is there any good reason other than the technical side of it that you think pointing couldn't be bet on the exchanges or online through the main bookmakers, or by someone, a specialist, making a book?
I mean, it's a really good question, one that I hadn't really sort of ever considered. I suppose conceivably there is no real reason. I mean, I suppose especially if in essence, I suppose more importantly, if you had some sort of live ability to live stream, so that there was funding in place for that to happen, I mean, potentially, I don't see any good reason why it couldn't be if there was going to be enough appetite for it. I mean, with what you were saying about the Forerunner race, I mean, are you saying that's because the bookies are pricing the races up unjustly to an overround that's way in their favour, or are you just talking about the fact that the racing is lacking a competitive nature?
The former, yeah, and also just some there was some really notably wild things where one bookie had obviously had a bit of a lump put on with them, and they'd shortened the horse to 3-1, and you look 2 stalls down and you could get the same horse for 10-1, which is kind of good if you're a punter, and you realise that and so there's just all these. It's just slightly disjointed. Look, I'd be really interested if there's any bookies that listen to this that to get in touch, and it would be great to have you on and discuss the perils of it. Yeah, basically they were priced very defensively at most races, which meant, and there was a horse that we knew of that had, we were anticipating. The rumor was that half of Cheshire was turning up to back this horse, which Julie won actually, and it was like the bookies were expecting that mob to turn up with a handful at every race, because everything was priced so conservatively. If you did go and make money, go with a view to making a few quid and trusting your judgment and knowing the form, it would have been very, very difficult to do so. So yeah,
I think betting is something we definitely shouldn't be shying away from. I mean, especially with affordability checks becoming such a big issue with backing on professional racing. Betting. I mean, Aidan O'Brien did a brilliant thing before where he basically likened most things in racing back to gambling, and that's where people form an opinion and a passion for the sport. So I think certainly it's an angle that if you can come and bet on course with cash and that it definitely is an angle that point-to-pointing has, and but then I suppose it is tricky for bookmakers that are betting on a sport that that I suppose they are slightly not privy to all the angles, and therefore they are always going to form a slightly defensive dialogue, and therefore I suppose it's for people to be creative and as you say, kind of shop around if there are enough bookies to kind of find some value, isn't there?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Things have got other jobs. They come to point-to-points because they love point-to-pointing. I was speaking to a maker at Brayfield. Their scaffolder, one was a scaffolder. And to be fair, we should probably get Lorney Hill actually said this to me at the weekend. Peter Derrick, it was his 50th year holding a book at a point-to-point this year. So yeah, that's quite incredible. And, he'd probably have massive opinions on how it's changed and what's, how he's coping nowadays. And yeah, Mark Hill, when we did the live streaming, Charlie, during COVID, Mark Hill opened a book, didn't he, online, because we could live stream and people could get hold of him to bet when they couldn't go during COVID. So it's something that can definitely be done, I think.
Just thinking about something here. Presumably, because you can't back the horses online, you can't lay the horses online. So the bookies, you say if you go to Cheltenham the week before, and they could take a strong view that Galloping the Champ was going to get beat, and they could lay their liabilities back to themselves on online bookmakers or the exchange, probably Matchbook, maybe even, Charlie, and they can do that. Whereas because there's no online book for pointing, they can't hedge their own liabilities in the same way. I guess that's
in theory then, as you say, that their liability is all for themselves unless they are able to lay some off with another bookmaker at the point-to-point in theory. So
maybe that's why there's such discrepancy in the price.
Yeah,
was taking a lump off Barry.
Yeah, I mean there could well be, and I suppose the point of view, the problem with trying to make a book for people to be able to bet off course is the fact that we don't know the fields till an hour before the race, and therefore from a technical perspective, I suppose it would take a lot of management and someone to be on the ball, updating all of that, pricing the races up in enough time to make it possible. But and I suppose that is where it would come down to the rewards from doing it probably wouldn't be worth the infrastructure possibly to put it in place. But it would be really interesting to speak to someone like Mark Hill to see what his thoughts were on it.
We shall do it.
Yeah.
Sam, let's talk about Tom Hutsby having a winner at High Easter and Dale Peters and David Kemp having a combined treble.
Yeah, I'll start with Tom, obviously someone who Charlie knows a lot better than me. He probably sees him every day. Great lad, very enthusiastic, been on the circuit for younger, did the pony race and that younger years. And no, I watched his ride. He gave that horse the other day, and I was actually very, very impressed. I thought, from what I saw from him a few rides ago, it's obviously hard to get going in points when you've just ridden pony races on the flat. It's a whole new ball game. And from probably 15, 20 rides, maybe Charlie no more. I think the way he's come on is massive, and he's not very big. His weight looks good, and he's already more stylish than his dad. So it wasn't hard, but no, it's good. Charlie, what about him?
Yeah, he's a really good kid. I mean, we've been here sort of 7.5 years now, and I've done a lot of coaching with him over the last 5 or 6 years. His dad and his mum and dad, Caroline and Fred, are obviously our landlords, and they bought a lot of horses to try and get him going, which is great. It was brilliant for him to have an outside winner, and yeah, I thought on Saturday, Sam, like you said, it's all sort of starting to come together. I thought he'd give the horse a really accomplished ride. He looked nice and tidy after the last, and he's got a bright future, as in he's still at school now, and it'll be interesting to see what his next move will be. I think his mum and dad are probably going to try and keep his novice status for next year, because it looks like Ed Vaughan is over the hills and gone with the National Novice Riders title. And I think it would actually be a good thing for him to retain that status. He's only 16 now, and he's a really good kid. I mean, and as you say, Sam, there's no doubt he is already a lot tidier than his dad, and when his dad starts giving him any grief, I just say, look, mate, just go home, Google Fox Hunters at Aintree, and just watch your dad for it. I can't remember the name of the horse. Sam might know, but for anyone that wants an entertaining thing to watch in the evening, Fred on this horse, where it turns over at the chair and the camera pans back round to see Fred putting the birch back in the fence. He's obviously so heavily concussed.
Oh, marvellous. And what about Dale Peters, Sam? It's slightly more at the other end of the age spectrum, but still knocking in winners for fun.
Yeah, he's riding really well. I saw him at Brayford, actually, and 6 winners over the weekend, because he obviously won the Queen's Cup on Friday with Rebel Dawn Rising for David Kemp. So that makes it 4 winners for David Kemp over the weekend. And yeah, David's horses come into their own this time of year, to be honest. And actually, they've hit form a lot sooner than they normally do. Obviously, he trains on stubble around his farm, David, so he's just struggled to get on there till later on, but he's got some really nice horses. Obviously, Law of Gold won the mixed open there at High Easter, beat Captain Biggles and Tully's Touch, and then 2 good horses. I imagine Law of Gold will probably possibly go back to Cheltenham for the Hunter Chase evening, and all the ammunition's done nothing wrong this year as well. So no, they're flying. Dale, as we've said many a time on this podcast, and backed up by Biddick the other day, he's one of the best lads on the circuit. Obviously, Charlie's used him this year as well to success. I think, Charlie, was that right?
He rode as a winner at Guilsborough. He's someone that Francesca and I used literally. We had like 2 horses when we first started off. He's a really, really good rider. I think if you probably backed this up at times, he could have ridden an awful lot more winners if he wanted to. As in, sometimes the hardest part is getting him to bloody come and ride for you. I remember back in the day when we had a young horse win when we first started. Our first ever young horse won up at Brocklesby, and he told me he couldn't come to ride. He couldn't go and ride it. Maybe it's because it was an unraced maiden, but he said he couldn't go and ride it because he had to do something on the farm. As in he's one of those guys. He dances to his own tune a bit and rides what he wants to ride. But I think he's as much ability as probably anyone within the point-to-point ranks. And if he'd have given it a proper kick, I'd say he'd have probably ridden twice as many winners, and he could easily have been a national champion. Yeah,
definitely, completely agree. And he was a good footballer as well. He's quite good at a lot.
Used to play a lot of five-a-side with him and Tommy Morgan up at Northampton goals, and we had a pretty good side, to be honest. But then he used to end up in like a cage fight. It was a pretty rough old spot up there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, pretty rough. Yeah. I was around like a headless chicken. So I was just there for the fun, to be honest. But
I think the best day was when Tom Messenger, who's a terrible footballer, got us all to come and play for the Pytchley in an inter-hunt competition, and there was absolute war on because we cleaned up, and I don't think anyone bar Messi actually has ever hunted with the Pytchley before. And
we had a Leicester football pro playing for us.
He was a Leicester goalkeeper, but he did play outfield.
Well, yeah, but he's still quite good.
Yeah, he was.
Okay, so this segues quite nicely into something else, which is classes also is not quite playing by the rules to get a winner over the line. So we like to be very balanced on this podcast, and we like to try and remain friends with people at all times. So we're certainly not looking to cause a stir here, but we do need to address something, as we did with Max Comley and the Hunter the hunt race at Brocklesby that time. And this was the matter of Pim winning for Claire Sheriff, who is, I believe, the fiance of Bradley Gibbs, in the race for confined to trainers of a small string, essentially. Now, look, there's every reason to believe, and it's totally, would be keen to hear that, perhaps Claire trains a few on a different, bar, out of a different bar, does a bit of a sell in lunchtime, whatever. If that's the case, absolutely fair play. But it did seem a little bit unfair to the other people contending in the race if essentially it was kind of part of the Gibbs string that had been entered in that race. Now, Sam, what do you think?
I think, it's probably something that shouldn't have been done, and it probably won't be done again because it won't be allowed to be done again. How they can control that, I don't know. Obviously, it's also owned by Tim Talbot, who's a massive owner in Brad's Yard. So that's why people are putting two and two together. It's a loophole that has been kind of abused, personally. And it probably, looking back now, I haven't spoke to Brad about it. He'll probably think, oh, well, this probably wasn't worth it. There might be a complete story behind it that none of us know about. But I doubt it. But it's something that should be looked at. How you monitor that going forward is going to be tricky when you don't have licensed trainers, so to speak. It's going to be hard to monitor, and I suppose anyone can go and do it if they want to. But it needs to be kind of stopped, really, because the races aren't there for that. If that is the case,
Charlie.
Look, I think, again, I suppose from a letter of the law, Brad, Claire, Tim Talbot have done nothing wrong. And first and foremost, the young lad that rode the horse was his first winner, so congrats him. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I think it's going to be something that needs to be tightened up, and it needs to be made not possible to do, as in those races are there for smaller operators. I think if you're fortunate enough to derive your living from the sport, which Francesca and I do, Brad and Claire do, then there's an element that playing the game the right way, you probably should leave those races alone, shouldn't you? Loophole or not. And I think, it just needs to be something that's tightened up. But again, it all comes down to admin and the ability to kind of foresee those sorts of things, and relatives of, can we say, professional trainers? Is that fair? That aren't able to kind of be able to run horses in those races, because they are definitely what we're trying to do, which is protect the very much amateur element of the sport, and I think those races, I don't know whether you lads agree, are there for those participants, so I don't hold it against Brad, or Claire. It's all about playing the game. It's a bit like the Hunt members thing that we've seen a couple of times already this season.
I think where I stand on it is that it's completely understandable, in the same way that the owners of Lossiemouth ran her in the Mare's Hurdle. Bear with me, Charlie.
It's not that.
There you go with
I think that's not the same.
Bear with. It's been a long day. I was getting distracted by my Red Nose Day stress ball. Basically, Kevin Blake made the point on a podcast that as long as the Mares program's there, then that loophole will be exploited and she won't run in the Champion Hurdle. And I'm making the point that while that loophole's there, it's something that can be done, and therefore I don't blame them for doing it. But what I would say is that it's not in the spirit of an amateur sport.
So we all agree.
Yeah, I think so.
I think if you're a spouse, partner of someone that trains more than, 5 horse or whatever it is to run in those races, you have a connection to one of those yards, you shouldn't be able to run them.
Yeah.
Well, that's that boxed off. So there is a thoroughbred bid sale tomorrow, and there's actually quite an uptick in British pointers being sold through Thoroughbid. I'm not sure if you've used the platform or not yet, Charlie, but it's quite interesting to see with the timing of the where we are in the year, and some 4 pretty nice horses being sold tomorrow. I interviewed all 4 of the connections earlier today, and I ended up kind of half thinking that there would be decent value, and then I was scrabbling around in the back of the sofa for a few quid to rub together. What do you make of Thoroughbid, Charlie? First and foremost, and yeah, surely it's a good thing that we're selling more British pointers, or at least try and sell more British pointers in whichever format that takes shape.
I think Thoroughbid is a really interesting platform. I think it is difficult for them to get a stronger hold in the marketplace because of Tattersalls and Goffs and their domination and monopoly of that side of the industry. But I really like their forward thinking and trying to do this. I think the bonus, the 5,000 pointer rules bonus is a really excellent initiative, and I think we've already seen that they are able to sell some really talented horses through their platform, and really it would be great to see James and Will and the other guys involved get a stronger foothold in the market, and fingers crossed it's something that given time they'll be able to do, because it is probably an area that should have more competition and should be more competitive and not just be dominated by 1, if not 2 massive powerhouses.
It's getting bigger as well. It's definitely growing. I think. I think it's over the last couple of seasons. It's definitely come forward, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean the one we could do a whole podcast on this. Someone referred to them recently to me in terms of Tats and Goffs as basically being unlicensed banks, and the amount of capital they're sat on. There's some truth to that. They offer credit. They have a huge reserves in which they can basically buy whatever they need to in terms of facilities and land and property, and they are huge outfits that probably have more cash than some high street banks. But where Thoroughbid for me probably becomes into its own is if I'm a smaller consignor that wants to get paid, for the horse that I'm selling within a fairly tight time frame. When I'm trying to keep cash moving and pay the feed man and pay the staff. Being paid 7 days after handfall is a bit of a game changer in those sort of circumstances. So I think that's definitely a USP that maybe some people haven't quite caught onto yet. But look, 4 horses being sold tomorrow will be really interesting. I'm saying tomorrow, we're recording this Tuesday. They'll have been and gone by the time you hear this. But do have a look and see what they made. So finally, Charlie, I wanted to ask you, if you're a fan of pointing, you're a fan of racing, and even if you're not a huge flat fan, you must at least pay some passing interest. I wanted to know how you guys were getting on with the breeze up horses and what comparisons you can draw between training the two.
The Rockets.
I mean,
Donny Rockets, let's go.
It's something different. Francesca and I have talked about it for a number of years now. We're obviously heavily involved with pinhooking with the National Hunt horses. It was just a different element to it. And yeah, it's really exciting. Look, as in from a personal perspective, a change is as good as a rest. And it's been a breath of fresh air being involved in this different process. And it is completely different, as in we're trying to train them to just go quickly for 2 furlongs, and not muck it up too much. I think where the crossover and the similarities are, we're trying to make them worldly wise enough that they can showcase their ability, whatever that might be, first time out. So they're actually all going away tomorrow to gallop on some grass over by Chipping Norton. And then they've probably a couple of other away days away before we're going to be at the Craven Sale, which is the second weekend in April. And from the team's point of view, I think they're all quite enjoying it, as in there's something nice about riding a nice 4-year-old pointer or a nice older horse and then jumping on a sharp 2-year-old like with a Blue Point colt and a Calyx filly that seem really quick and the feel you get off them is completely different to what you have in these stores. It's going to go point to point in it's really exciting in its own way and I mean, from a training perspective, I don't think we're telling anyone what they don't know. It's a lot more straightforward routine, you know, as in it's less sort of duration of exercise, less intensity of exercise, and you know, most of the time they're just doing one canter every day. If they work hard, they have the next day off, and you're just trying to keep them fresh and just train a different sort of muscle group, you know, short twitch fibers, and trying to make them as fast as they can possibly be. And right now as well, you know, you're building them up to running, and they're going to a sale, they're sort of 80% fit, and they just got to go 2 furlongs quick. You know, with the point-to-pointers, they've got to probably jump 500 obstacles in prep. They go away 3 or 4 times, some, you know, at least twice to a track. They gallop round with others, and they've got to turn up at a race, take all that in, jump well, and beat 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rivals before you can conceivably sell them nicely. So it looks, on the face of it from the outside looking in, a slightly less invasive and risky policy, but I think probably therefore that the fall off is greater, you know, that they need to go fast, and they need to be by the right size and be the right sort of physical model.
That's fascinating. Thanks very much. Sam?
Maybe point-to-pointers that are faster than the blue point. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the issue the other day, like we had a bloody Marla or something go quicker than the 2-year-old that's going next week, and that was
And when does the Marla run, and what's it called?
There he is again with his £20 stakes. Sam, is there anything else you want to discuss before we wrap things up?
No, that's all good. No, we've probably bored everyone enough now with our talking. Well, you're talking, but no.
Charlie, there's a lot of doom and gloom in the industry, and you know, you get to see it from all angles. Before we leave, give us some positivity. If you're listening to this thinking Labour are about to get in, close all the hunting, there's going to be no point-to-points, this is the last season, we're going to enjoy it, and look, it's raining. Turn the story around for us. What's going on out there that we can be hopeful and thankful for?
Yeah, I think there's huge reasons to be positive. You know, I think Peter Wright has done an excellent 6 years of service to the sport and steered it through some really tricky times. And, you know, he leaves it in an upwardly mobile and positive position. You know, we're about to appoint a new CEO of the PPA, and that's going to give a new direction, new energy, different thoughts and ideas. You know, yes, we're probably going to see a Labour government come in and therefore potentially a ban completely on trail hunting. But I think the enthusiasm for the sport there is massive. You know, there's even an argument that might open up new investment and sponsorship opportunities, you know. So I think right now, the racing this season, you guys have been there at the coalface seeing what's gone on. It's been really competitive stuff, you know, as in what we need to do is drive that forward and keep selling our product, which when people come, they love, and try and drive horse numbers up. And then in a probably what inevitably is going to be a post-hunting world, retain the enthusiasm for the people that we've been so fortunate to tap into through hunting that have helped us run the point-to-points. So I'm hoping that the new person that comes in is going to go along with that sort of dialogue and, like I say, bring fresh ideas to the sport, and fingers crossed there's going to be a place for us moving forward in the future. And I genuinely do believe there will, because I still think it's a fantastic sport to be involved in, and it gives people a sense of belonging, and I don't see that changing. Bless you.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it myself. I think Sam was agreeing with that. I think his body was agreeing with it, and his mind was still processing. Charlie, look, fantastic to have you on again. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight, and we'll no doubt catch up with you soon.
Pleasure. Thanks, lads. Keep up the good work.
Thanks very much. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks, and until then, we hope to see you on course somewhere soon.
You're listening to Pointing Pointers, the Point to Point podcast.